Welcome. Have you ever heard of words like single page application or maybe server-side rendering or client-side rendering? Yes. In this video, we will find out about different types of websites and different types of rendering those websites. So let's start with single page applications or SPAs. So what is a single page application? It is this type of website that is fully managed by JavaScript when the page is loaded. What I mean is that we can look on that by an example. The best example would be the official Facebook website, because Facebook created React, and React is primarily used to build single page apps. But let's look on Twitter. Twitter is also built with React and it is a single page application. So if we access the official website, the first thing we can notice that if we switch between different types of pages, we don't have any page refresh. So everything is just getting re-rendered when we switch pages. That's because, as I mentioned before, it is fully managed by JavaScript. Let's inspect the page from under the hood. Let's view page source. And let's inspect what do we have inside. If we scroll down to the body tag, we can see a little of markup inside. And that's because with single page apps, when we first access the website, we only receive a few HTML, only the initial part, and everything else is inserted and managed by JavaScript. So in single page apps, it is the default that we have the mounting point, or let's say the wrapper element for the application. In React case, it is a div with ID of something like root or React root. As you can see on Twitter, it is called React root, and the application goes inside here. And that's it. And single page applications are highly dependent on JavaScript because they are managed by JavaScript. So when the page loaded, you receive as less HTML as possible, and also you receive bundles, a few files or maybe one file of JavaScript. And all logic goes inside this bundle. That's why it might take a while for the first time when you load the page or the website. So this bundle contains all JavaScript to manage the website. That's it, and that's how you can actually recognize a single page app. So what's the point of single page apps is to make websites look more like native mobile apps. Because if you open Twitter, it doesn't feel like a website at all. I mean, it is actually a website, but it doesn't feel like that, right? So that's the point of single page apps, and all magic happens because of React. Pretty cool, right? Now, let's talk about server-side rendering. So what is the difference? So server-side rendering is this type of rendering like the traditional way when we access websites. So the first thing to notice when we switch between different pages, we can see page refresh. So I opened Twitter Docs. So this is the official website, but this is their not docs, but help center. So if I navigate between different pages, you can see this page refresh. And that's because this help center has server-side rendering. If I view page source of this page, I can see all markup that I have on the page. That's because when I access this website, the website is being assembled on the server. So all markup is being sent from the server to client, to the browser, unlike with single page apps. Again, with single page apps from the server, we only receive the initial markup and JavaScript bundle that will manage everything inside the browser. Unlike with server-side rendering, everything is managed on the server. I mean, we obviously can do some things on the client, but all hard work is done on the server. So that's what is server-side rendering, and it is really easy to notice the difference. But it might happen that you might see the website that on the load time has all markup, but when you switch pages, you don't have this page refresh and it feels like an app. Yeah, that's totally fine, and it is called hybrid apps. So that's possible to mix single page app with the server-side rendering. So that's totally fine, and a lot of websites do use that. So, but it is a little bit harder to implement. Now I have prepared this little table for us to actually see more difference between those two. So CSR stands for client-side rendering and SSR stands for server-side rendering. Then we have single page app, server-side rendering dynamic and server-side rendering static. So what's the difference between dynamic and static? Again, let's look on this website, and what do we see here? We first see that it has English version, and obviously if they have English version, they have versions in other languages. So how it is related to static or dynamic? For example, let's take this text. When we have static web page, this text is static inside our code. So inside our code, we've written how to post photos or GIFs on Twitter. Unlike with dynamic type of rendering, we have a skeleton or we have a template that we use for our content. What I mean is that for English or Russian version, we probably don't want to copy and paste everything for different languages, right? So we only want to create a template, and based on the request, based on the language, the content will be changed. So that's what it means, server-side rendering by dynamic. We have a template and we use the template based on some conditions or the request. Unlike with static web pages. With static web pages, let's say if we have a blog that has, let's say 1000 blog posts, then we will end up with 1000 files for our blogs. We have blog number 1.html, blog number 2.html, etc. Unlike with server-side rendering, we have one file which has a template, and every time we post a new post, we have the blog post using template and it is being displayed on the website. So that's the difference. Now let's overview this table and let's go one by one. So first we have app fill. And what is app fill? With single page apps, I put plus because if we look on Twitter and if we navigate through the website, we can see that it actually feels like an application, not like a website at all. So that's the point of single page apps. With the server-side rendering and server-side rendering static, we don't have such things because the page is refreshing and we understand instantly that this is a website. It is possible to achieve this feeling of app by using hybrid app, as I said before, but that's some not rare cases, but it is just another topic. Then we have fast load, or how fast page is loading on the initial request. So I put plus minus everywhere because we have multiple factors that website is depend on, like server location, I don't know, bundle size, maybe content size, and all things. But with single page apps, it might be a little bit slower because we have the initial bundle that might be too bloated or might be too large if we have a really big app like Twitter, let's say. And the last point is SEO. With single page apps, SEO is really, really bad, unlike with server-side rendering. And why is that? I will explain. Again, if we look on Twitter and if we inspect the page, we have initial markup and we have initial tags. And those tags, obviously, if it is managed by JavaScript, they can be dynamically changed when the website loads. But the thing is that when crawlers like Facebook crawler or let's say Google or Twitter crawler, let's say if you want to share your website on Facebook, Facebook must first crawl your website. And when it tries to access your website, it receives this initial markup. It doesn't wait until JavaScript will manage everything. So with single page apps, we can only put like the initial tags for all of our pages. So that's why we can't really change tags dynamically. So let's say you want to share your app on Facebook. You will have only one meta tag for all pages. Like let's say this OG site name. When the page is loaded, it will be this tag. When we load, let's say, notifications, this OG tag will be the same because we only have one markup for all of our pages. That's why it is basically called single page app, because we like load only one initial markup and then in the future it is just getting rendered every time. So that's why for SEO it is not that well. Unlike with server-side rendering, when we already receive page from the server, and on the server we can insert meta tags based on the page content. Okay, now what do we have here? We have also examples with React. So for single page apps, Create React App is the most popular boilerplate out there, and we will use that one during our course. So this is very popular, and most likely when we start a new React project, we will pick Create React App. Then we have Next.js and Gatsby.js for server-side rendering. So Next.js is a framework which is built on top of React, and it is also very popular and it is actively maintained. That's probably it. When we want to just server-side rendering, just go with Next.js. Next we have Gatsby.js. Gatsby.js is also very popular and it has really good tools around itself. I guess that's all what I wanted to say about different types of rendering. Maybe let me also share use cases, right? Everyone wants to know use cases of different frameworks. So when to use single page app, when to use server-side rendering dynamic or static. So for single page apps, use case would be if you want to create a website that will feel like an app, like Twitter, let's say, right? So when you switch pages, you don't have this page refresh, and so you have spinners when the data is loading, etc. So if you want your website to be more like an app, then just definitely go with single page app. Then all other cases are server-side rendering apps. Now the question is dynamic or static. Let's say you are building a blog. So with static web pages, if you have, as I mentioned before, 1000 posts, then you have 1000 pages. And every time when you add a new blog post, you will have +1 page. And every time you add this blog, you need to rebuild your website. And as the number of pages grows, then it will take more and more time for build to be published. So you should consider that when building, let's say, a blog with static web pages. Unlike with the dynamic. Dynamic is like a very universal case if you want to go with server-side rendering and don't to actually care about how many pages you will have, because it's just, you got the template and you have everything rendered. For example, you have, let's say, server-side rendering and you use dynamic server-side rendering. You access the, let's say, a product, and you got the product based on ID that you put inside your search bar. So you have the template, the skeleton for the page, and then based on that ID, you get your product page displayed. So you have only one page, one template, and by using the template to display data. Unlike with the static web pages. So for every product, regardless whether it has the same markup, you will end up with, let's say, 1000 or 2000 products if you have on your website. So yeah, that's all for this video. I guess you understood the difference. Feel free to ask any questions if you didn't understand anything.